All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Doyle Bueller, and just getting the tech set up here. Today, I'm going to be talking about my business GPS. One of the ways of looking at change, and if I could just show that again, um, change, it's a strategy, storytelling, and road mapping tool you can hold in your hand. I'm going to kind of go through a process of change management and how you can actually use some very, very simple tools to be able to strategize and to be able to tell your story and to be able to create a roadmap as well. So it's actually quite an interesting integration that I've been working on. So welcome everybody. If you can hear me, let me know in the comments. If you can't hear me, then let me know in the comments as well. And I'll see if I can fix anything from my end. So excited to have you here. Excited to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be able to do and how we're going to be able to get things rolling here. So again, I want to talk about change and the story about change and why sometimes it doesn't always necessarily work as well as we want. But it's honestly, it's some simple fixes that will allow us to be able to work with change and be able to understand how change actually works as well. So it's important to see how these different pieces fit together and how we can actually use them. And then again, having the tools and strategies and tactics to be able to make them work as well. So it's very, very important that we're able to do that. So I want to get quickly started here. I won't be too long. But please, if you have any comments, any questions along the way, please ask them and I will get to them as quickly as possible. If you're watching this in replay, then please just hashtag replay. I'd love to know where you're coming from, where you're at right now, and what kind of business you're in as well. And I'd love to kind of connect the dots and connect you with other people as well that kind of might work for you as well. So I want to talk about change and why change doesn't necessarily work with everything, right? What we typically want to see happen, right? When we talk change, what we're really saying is that we want to do something, we want to have an effort, and we want to have some overtime, and we want to have a change in position as well. And that's typically why we decide to do the change, is because we want to change the position. But if we can look at sort of the present right now, this is where we are, where we want to be able to decide, hey, we need to make a change, right? We need to decide now because we want to be able to look at the future and what this future change might actually mean for us in our business as well. So we want to look at changing position, if I can just position. And sometimes we consider that as distance. And the reason why I say distance is because I want to kind of show you how it fits together at the end of this as well. And then we've got change of time. And technically, what we want to see is your change in position. And just as a little side note, what is that symbol of change that we typically use, right? It's a simple triangle, meaning delta, right? It's a change. Change equals a symbol. And when we talk about it in the engineering field, honestly, in almost every field out there, when we're talking about change, we're talking about this symbol as well. And typically it's called delta. But it's a change in something that you're wanting to measure. So that's what we're wanting to measure. We're wanting to measure a change in position, and we're wanting to measure a change in time, and we're wanting to measure a change in effort as well. So if we see this, effort, your change in effort equals your change in position, right? Your change in effort equals your change in position over your change in time as well. And we want to kind of be able to use these pieces so that we can actually move forward with them. So that's typically what we want, right? This is what we want, is we want change and we want it now and we want it to accelerate our growth and we want to make a difference with that change, right? But you know what? Sadly, a lot of times what does happen with change, you know, it can be quite simple, but typically what happens with change is we look at it. Just let me get this nib right. See what's going on there. All right. So typically what happens is, yes, we want the change to be like this. What honestly most of the time happens, and everybody can probably agree with this, is that you might start the change it gets to a point and then it kind of levels off. So you're kind of stuck. It's like, well, okay, we started the change. We wanted to make a difference, but what happened? We got a little bit further. And then, okay, so as a, in projects and in business, then we think, okay, well, let's add a little bit more change. Okay, so let's change it again. And what happens again? We typically rises for a bit and then it kind of flatlines. And we can do this like multiple times before we get to that position that says, hey, this is what we want to, this is where we want to be. This is what we want to be going at. And this is your change in position, right? We want to be able to get there, but we're looking at significant amount of steps along the way that kind of stop us and slow us down and prevent us from going there. So if we look at it, we want to be able to do this, but typically we only get this. We get steps by steps by steps by steps. And there's actually a method to that. And we actually need to embrace this, because those little steps, these little changes, these little deltas are actually what gets us to this point. So a lot of us give up after saying, oh, well, the change didn't work. We make it to here and the change didn't work. Oh, we'll go try something else. Oh, that change didn't work. Oh, we'll go try something else. So we're never actually utilizing, we're never actually embracing that aspect of change and what we're able to do with that. So again, if we look at it in terms of getting to that next level, we see this change and we want to make that change, but what do we actually do? We don't actually, nothing actually sticks, nothing actually works as well. So we want to be able to see, well, how can we do this? And quite honestly, if we just look at it slightly different, if we look at it as smaller micro changes towards our goal, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be able to embrace these small little changes over time, and we need to be able to organize those changes so that they're integrated, they're part of what we're doing, and they're part of how we're actually doing it as well. So imagine if we could integrate all these changes up front, keep going, there's a few more, but if we are able to integrate those, if we're actually able to create those together, what does that mean? That means that we're actually able to build a simple roadmap, that we're able to build a story, we're able to build a strategy that enables us to be able to do that. And it's actually quite interesting when you look at it. Now, the symbol of change I've said is delta. So what if we take that literally as a triangle and say, okay, well, let's make this change. And let's make this change useful for us. What would happen if we then stack these changes as well? So we start with one change triangle, and let's call it that, a change triangle. And if we want to go up multiple steps, then we need multiple change triangles, correct? So if we're then able to manage these different triangles together, we can then look at, well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of change to be able to move that graph forward, right? Remember, I was talking about this small change and this small change and this small change, and up the curve we go. So if we can actually say, okay, well, let's break it down. Let's create a strategy around these specific change triangles and decide how do we actually stack this change. And I'm going to show you how it kind of all fits together shortly, but it becomes an actual tool that you can use specifically for your business, for your strategy, for your roadmap, for your storytelling as well. And it works because it fits everything together in one simple piece as well. So just keep that in mind for right now. But let's say, what happens how do we actually then go to the next step and say, okay, well, I have 4 of these change triangles that Doyle's talking about, right? How do I actually make them work to be able to see what's specifically important and how do these pieces fit together as well? So if I look at them slightly different, if I break them down into multiple triangles, okay, I just want to see how I can draw this. So each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll get them into slightly very soon. Each of these has 3 specific sides on each of those faces of the triangle, right? So we said we want 4 specific triangles and each of these have 3 sides, right? So this actually ties in with the model that I use quite a lot in terms of how do we actually break this change down. So out of all of these triangles of change, these 4 micro steps, micro changes, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of each of those, we each have a side to be able to investigate, to look at and say, okay, well, what is about this specific change that we want to make work? What is it about these specific changes that we want to make work? What is about these and these type thing? So what we're doing here intuitively is we're actually building a roadmap for this. We're actually lining up these steps of our whole change. So if we, again, we're looking at one big change, but we're breaking it down into 4 specific changes that are integrated, that are part of what we're doing, that are part of how we actually are able to build this as well. So then if we actually unwind these, unroll these, what do we do? So again, this is time, this is present, and this is our future, and this is our position or our distance. Okay, so if we unroll these triangles, what we're really doing is we're really creating a step-by-step process. So here's, for example, step 1, and we have 1, 2, 3. Change number 2, we have 1, 2, 3. Change number 3, we have 1, 2, 3. And we've got number 4 up here, 1, 2, 3 as well. That fits in there as well. So can you see how we actually add these step by step by step? And one of the important things to look at is each of these triangles of change become actually that. And that's how we do that. And this is where I pulled together the AMPS model, which looks like this when we have the 4 pieces together. We've got our audience. We've got our method. We have our process, and we have our story. So AMPS. So if we're able to put these 4 pieces of change together aligned with this model, this is where we can actually make progress. So for example, this is where we would then say, okay, first I want to be able to look at my audience. Next, I want to be able to look at my methods. The third thing I want to be able to do is look at my process. And the fourth thing I need to be able to do is look at my story. And if we're able to put all these pieces together, if we're able to put all these steps together, this is how we can actually use this to our advantage, to leverage that into something quite remarkable in terms of being able to create a roadmap forward, right? We have our steps. We have our specific outcomes for each one along the way. We have our time that we're working with, and we have our distance, our position that we're changing as well. And when we put all these together, we can use actually a very, very simple tool. And the way I've done that is actually taking this map, this diagram, and converting it into a PDF that we can actually print out into from an A4 or letter size paper as well, with all of your specific steps along the way. And when we're able to do that, we can then create it, fold it, and glue it, and put it into a specific model as well, like this. And the power of this model is that it shows us exactly the steps that we want to be able to take. It shows us each of the little pieces that we need to be able to understand. And it also tells us how these interact with us along the way as well. So if we can actually then see a visual, tactical, tangible model that we can take our steps, we can take our roadmap steps that I talked about of being able to create those activities, those strategies over time and over position as well. And we can see it as a strategy, and we can see it as a roadmap, each of those steps, and then we can also see it as a story, because we're then able to put these pieces together and explain to our audience and explain to our customer and explain to our partners and businesses and that sort of thing. And even for us to understand, how do the pieces fit together for our business. How do these pieces fit together for making it work for our business is ultimately what we want to be able to do. And this is a tool that you can actually do that as well. So it's quite simple in terms of how do we actually take these change management tools. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to make progress, right? Because we wouldn't be doing this without progress. So we want to be able to make sure that we have these pieces in place. And again, I pointed it out at the beginning, but just to reiterate, change typically, we want change to look like this or even like this, right? We want progress to move forward. What does it actually look like? Usually it looks like that. Okay. And how do we then change that? Well, we decide that we want to make multiple levels of change. We want to progress this way. And why do we do that? Well, so that we can move from the present to the future, right? So we can go like this, and we can make these change very, very specific. We've outlined that. That's what the little model is. And this is what allows you to be able to tell your model. And we want to be able to move. This is your displacement or your position. And we want to be able to improve our position as well. So we want to improve our position over time from the present to the future. How do we do that? With 4 micro steps. Being able to, where did I put that? Being able to then put it into a roadmap, a strategy, and a story that you can then explain to your audience as well. So what do we get out of this? It's what I call your digital velocity. And what does that equal? That actually equals your change in position over your change in time. And when we do that, we're able to, let's get this right. Doesn't always change as fast as I want. When we get the digital velocity, that's fundamentally what we want to be able to calculate, what we want to be able to do. Because at the end of the day, this is what's absolutely really critical. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be able to do much, right? So we're saying, well, let's make this change. Let's build a model that allows us to be able to do that change consistently and with certainty as well, moving us from the present to the future as well. So excellent. So wanted to quickly wrap up. If you have any questions on that, please, I'd love to hear what you think and how you think it might apply as well. Oh, sorry, the listening live but screen is frozen. Close the app and relaunch. And just froze on the Delta. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was a few minutes ago. So hopefully you've been able to see some of it. It might be the feed, it might be the connection as well, but I seem to be doing okay on the connection on my end. But what else? And thanks for the comments. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually include who it is. So I appreciate for those who are watching as well. So again, that's ultimately what we want to be able to do, is look at our digital velocity. And this is our rate and change in position. What are we doing differently? But also, what are we doing differently over time? And without those key ingredients, we're just kind of spinning our wheels. We're not really being able to go forward, or not really sure what to do. We don't have that certainty and that clarity in terms of, okay, what can we do next? How can we do it next as well? So that's what we need to look at. How do we do that? We do that with a simple strategic tool that we use here that can help you define your strategy, help you define your roadmap when you unwind it, and help you tell your story as well. If you'd like more information, or if you want to be able to kind of see how this all fits together, just simply go to my informational site, my scorecard, that allows you to kind of see what pieces are really important here to be able to do that. So if you go to bit.ly/business GPS, and again, this is caps, just the GPS is caps. And GPS is what I'm talking about, but this is your growth pathway strategy. All right. Cool. Thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your patience. Would love to hear from you in terms of what you have going on. If you think this might kind of fit, or if you have questions about it. But happy to show you more. And if you go to bit.ly/business GPS in caps, you'll be able to kind of help define that vision forward for you as well. So thanks again. Appreciate it. And we will see you guys online.